Hey guys, this will be video 11 for the how to design build a 50 Explorer replica, and actually using Stuart McDonald templates this time around because I really relied on them to do all this machine work. I think I covered that a bit in the last video, but nonetheless I'm going to discuss it some more probably in this video, and I'm going to have to go by a points list here because this is the third time I've done this video. And I quite frankly, I can't remember. If I get it through the video, I won't be able to remember what I've covered or haven't covered unless I just read it off a list. And anyway, let's start from the very beginning and let's do some weight analysis. And the body did obviously drop a little bit, actually considerably more than I was expecting. And it reminded me, when you're working with a dense wood versus a really, really light wood, when you take the same volume of material out of a very dense board, the weight is considerably relieved. If it's a really light board and you take that same volume of weight out, it's not nearly as noticeable in the big scale, or in the big picture, I should say. All right. Let's start out in pounds, and let me see if that's in the camera. That should be okay. I think our last weight analysis was about 6.48 or 6.5 pounds. Seems like it was under 6.5. But she's down to 5.768, and that's considerable. And that's why I discussed the dense wood, because that's a considerable drop when you're talking well over a half of a pound for that small of amount of a route out, and that small of amount as well, and then that, because see, that had already been cut right there. So anyway, very impressive. So the guitar is really getting light, or lighter, I should say. It's not going to feel heavy at all. It should feel ideal, and I'm really hoping that the guitar is going to be getting closer to 8 pounds than 9, but I know it's not going to be under 8, and it should not be anywhere near over 9 unless you went in with a Bigsby and stuff like that. So let me get to my list. All right, and I'm just going to have to check this stuff off. We talked about the weight analysis. We talked about dense wood, and I elected to go with and this channel is not finished. And let me look at my list here. Les Paul channel with fillet, 5/8 of an inch deep. It's 5/8 of an inch deep. This assures no risk of warpage or breakage if dropping. So what I want to discuss here is the original design was such that you just route a channel and just leave that channel open, but then you drill through at this point here and this point here straight across. And that way, when you feed the pickup wires through, well, they come out and you can see them, and then you fish them through the rest of the body. But what I'm going to be doing is very much custom and very much an improvement over the original design. And well, so yeah, it'll go like that, and it'll go like that. Because I mentioned a guitar once that I had that the body warped really bad, and it was it wasn't anything that I built. I bought it that way, and the guy had unloaded it, and when I got it to my shop, I thought somebody had tried to arch the top, but what had happened, it had so much route work done right here, and then they opened up the pickup cap. It was a strap. It was all opened up, that when they did all that route work, that board went exactly where it always wanted to go, and it convexed on the top, and sure enough, when I put a straight edge across the back, it was concaved on the back. So, and I've always kept that in the back of my mind, thinking that, man, when I'm doing machine work, I got to really think about things like that. So I'm going to be coming in here with, this is close to 3/16 of an inch thick, and it's going to be getting this fillet epoxied. I'm just going to put it right there. It's going to be getting this fillet epoxied in right there, and then this will get continued down here, and all that'll be epoxied in. and then everything will be machined clean, and it'll be sanded flat. What that will do, it will, and the reason I mentioned this is 5/8 of an inch thick, I mean deep, right there. Well, it lets you know. Let's look at how much wood is left in the body. Okay, let me back up. Okay, 5/8 of an inch deep. We're nowhere near encroaching on, the back of the guitar. So, and the Les Paul calls for a 1/2 inch deep route channel for the Les Paul, and then it gets the maple cap. So that means that in order to feed wires for a Les Paul, you need a 1/2 inch deep cavity, 1/2 inch wide, and that'll give you plenty of room to run all the wires to the three-way. Because you'd be surprised. I think there are four, one, two, three. I think there are 4 wires that go up to that three-way. So they take up quite a bit of area before you get the 5th wire and the 6th wire fed in back here. So you end up with a wad of wires from here back. You got to make certain that cavity, that channel, is large enough to receive all that. And the way this is, these are cut on an angle. Those are cut on an angle with a 3/16 inch drill bit, before, obviously, through that area right there. And then this one was cut ever so slightly above the top on that angle right there. That ought to make perfect sense. Let me get a little bit longer stick. I hadn't planned on talking about this, and this is kind of cool because I've got my checklist that I'll be able to go back to. Just keep that in the back of your mind. And what does this allow you to do right here? I actually put the pickup ring up here, and I drew a line where the screw's going to go through. That's going to guarantee that you could put as long a screw as you want, and there's no way you're going to interfere into the wire. The way he had it drawn on his design, he had it drawn where you drill from this point straight across, and that's not wise, because you run the risk of that wire is directly under the screw, and if you ended up with a long screw, the screw would probably go into the wire, and you'd have a screwed up situation, literally. And so anyway, think about things like that. Think about the finished guitar, and then back, and then reverse it. Okay. And therefore, the same thing up here. The screw is way over here. We're in good shape. So let me check my list here. Les Paul channel with a 5/8 inch route assures no risk of warpage or breakage if dropped. If this were, obviously I proved that there's still an enormous amount of wood down here, but this is a pretty big platform. And let's get melodramatic for a while. Let's say that you just dropped this thing and it hit right there on concrete, and it was just very unforgiving. Here's the only drawback to quarter sawn wood. If this thing hit like that right there, I doubt it would break off, but there's a possibility it could crack, and you'd have to be doing a repair. But if you routed this out and left that open, yes, there is a possibility that if it struck, it would probably crack. It would probably break right here at that thinnest point, and it would probably break here and right there, probably. But there's a possibility it could break all the way back here because of the blow, especially with this being thicker. But when I come in with this material back here, epoxied in, and epoxied in right here, that's an enormous amount of strength epoxied in that strengthens the body. Is it going to be the difference? I mean, that's all hypothetical. Depends on how tall you are, when you drop the guitar. Depends on where the guitar is, or how high up on stage you are. So anyway, let's get back to positive thoughts. And let me check that off. So I like doing that, fill it, and it assures Also, from a standpoint, I didn't even discuss the fact that from a tonal standpoint, it assures that anything that's going on tonally, this is pretty important. Anything that's going on from a tonal standpoint where the tone is transferring into the body right here and going around this area, it is allowed to continue through the top, and the tone is continuing in the top. It's not hitting that break point. Okay, it's going to be a considerable improvement. You got to have the channel in there. There's just no way around that. And this is a big platform. If you had this three-way way back here with all this weight left up here, it would probably get to a point where this guitar would be unmanageable. It would probably get fairly heavy. So by putting the fillet in back in the top and it being really nice and tight, it's going to help with the tone. Is it going to be measurable? I think it would be. Would we won't have any way to gauge it, of course, because we didn't build the guitar with it open first and then glue it all together. So the next thing would be I covered it briefly in the last video, and it's really frustrating because well, I did a video and then I lost it. So, and I went ahead and I think it was Monday when I did that video, no, I think it was Tuesday. And this camera that I have, I'm not even going to go there, but sometimes I'll do a video and then sometimes I'll leave it. It won't even record. So neither here nor there. I'm hoping it's corrected by now. But I did lose a video that I did. I think it was either Monday night or Tuesday night. But I just went ahead and said, F it. I'm just going to do the rest of the work, and then I'll do a video closer to this weekend, and then do 2 videos back to back. And I'll probably will do a video tomorrow. I think tomorrow's Saturday. I think today's Friday. Today may be Thursday. But nonetheless, by this weekend, it'll be getting very close to being a finished guitar because I'm about to glue the neck in. The neck is, all the machine work here is 100% finished, fit, true, center line. I could put the glue on it, clamp it, flip off the lights, and go cut the grass. So she's ready to turn into a guitar. But the cool thing is, still haven't done any of that up there, so I don't risk, damaging that beautiful work. Because I'm at a point now where this body is so close to being finished, I gotta do exactly that. I've got to finish it and actually get some sealer on it so that it starts protecting these edges and stuff. The last thing you would want to do is get it to this point and then just put it over up on a shelf, and then run the risk of things dinging those corners. And before this video ends, I'm going to pause because I've got the router sitting over there. I'm about to run the 1/8 inch round over. Okay, so let me check my list, order of operations. All right, how I did this is using my Stuart McDonald templates. I think I had mentioned I use these templates. I may have discussed it some in the last video, but you might be looking at these and asking yourself, well, which one should I do first? Should I do the pickups first, or should I do the tenon first? I like doing the tenon first, and for no particular reason other than the fact that yes, for a very particular reason. If you machine this location first, then just imagine you've got that done right there. Then you're getting ready to do the tenon. Let me see if I can explain this without losing anybody. Because I know there are a lot of people that watch these videos that have never even plugged a router up, let alone, stood behind the router running 25,000 RPMs and then fought that devil. But let's see, where's the router bit, by the way? Okay. You don't just route every bit of that all out in one pass. Typically, you're working with big bits and you're stepping down as you go into it. Well, with a short bit like this, as you step down, if you lose your train of thought, your bearing will be below the template, and you run the risk of screwing things up or it jumping over, and then you tear up the cavity in there. That is, if this pickup cavity had already been cut. But if this pickup cavity had not been cut, just imagine, it's all solid wood, and then you come up here and you start taking out this area here, and then you drop the bit down. You take out, you'd be running in this area right here, and then you just keep going down further and further and further, and then even once you get past the template, it's no big deal because now your bearing is running along the wood. See, the bearing would be running along this wood surface all the way down. It wouldn't matter. But since there is no surface right here, that's where you get into doing catastrophic damage. And I mean, if it catches, if it doesn't hurt you, it'll scare you so bad you won't ever even want to run a router anymore. So I say do the tenon first because it's a pretty serious operation. Guarantees that you're staying on center as well. And then step over, and if you've got your Stuart McDonald templates, then you simply align this template up, get it on the center line. Okay, so imagine you're looking at that tenon work right there. Now that your tenon is cut, you're going to have to work your center line from here back. Now you can route this because odds are, I'm not going to show it, but you still have the same issue if you let this one get below here. But odds are you're going to be doing so much stepped routing in that pickup location. You're going to have multiple bits. You're not really going to be able to take that bit and route every bit of that because you're going to have to be using a 1/2 inch bit right here. And I need to stop talking about this in a minute, but I want to cover just a little bit more so that I really drive this home. Where I'm going with this, I typically do all of my pickup cavities with just that bit to start out with, and just get it real close to where I want it. It's probably still about 1/8 of an inch high. In other words, I just got the mass out. So paying attention to where that bearing is in relation to the bottom of the router. Okay, and that it's and that the bottom of the router is not right here, and that bearing is going to risk getting off because get you in trouble. And then once I do that rough out there, see this one's much deeper than this one just because of the design of the pickups, and then you'll be doing all this finished step work with a 1/2 inch router bits anyway. Okay. So order of operations, the tenon route first, the pickup cavity first, then your control cavities, right? So order of operations, obviously you laid everything out per the central line first. You cut the tenon first, you cut the pickup locations. I'm glad I checked this note here. When I say cut this location right here, only because you've already engineered your scale and you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that that's where the bridge is going. If you didn't know any of this stuff, you could go ahead and cut the tenon and be safe. If you were toying between the fact of, I may go with a 24.562 inch scale or a 24 3/4 inch scale. Well, those are so close that your tenon's really not going to change. It really shouldn't. But if you jump to if you're thinking about doing a 24 fret guitar and you're going to go with a 25.5 inch scale, that tenon's going to be in a different location. That tenon's going to end up being close to 1/2 of an inch longer. So do all your engineering first, and I'm going off the rails here, but for a good cause, because as I've mentioned in the past, just know what it is that you're building, but understand that once you commit to a certain build, well then pull the trigger and stay on point. That way you're able to pick up templates, put them down based on those locations, and then you know it's okay to come in here and start rocking and rolling. In other words, get the guitar built. Otherwise, you'll be second guessing yourself all the way to the point where you end up losing interest in it and it gets tabled and you never even finish what you started. And it's easy to do. It's very easy to lose interest in a project because most people have no idea how overwhelming they can be and how many actual order of operations there really are to finishing a guitar. And it's a lot, and that's why these guitars are as expensive as they are. Okay. The next thing would be your control cavity, and I'm just going to do, yeah, you would do your control cavities after that. It didn't matter if you did this one first or this one first. I went ahead and drilled these three locations first, then based on, I did nothing over here. I drilled these three locations because I knew they were consistent. They per historical specs. I wasn't going to come in here and start cowboying this thinking that I would improve it. This is exactly where it was designed to go. So didn't make any changes there. And then once those drill locations came through the back, that allowed me to do a center line mark and then come in here and just build, not this one. This was the last template I made for doing can't hold it. This was the last template I made for doing just the shelf route work because I wanted to do it with that bit, and I couldn't have a real thin template, if I was using that, because I was barely, the blade was only going to be going into the body, I think it's 3/32. It's like 2.5 millimeter, give or take. So I had to have a really thick template. And I thought it was wise to just do this on my drill press, because if I got it perfect on my drill press, I knew once I put it up here and put masking tape down on the body, masking tape on the backside, jet glued that in place per the center line. Then when I pulled the trigger on the router, the only thing I had to do was guarantee that I had the depth correct. Okay, but I jumped the gun there a little bit because this first cavity route was done with this bit in steps, but I did the same thing where I just came in with because I don't have that template, and if I had that template, it would probably only be a 1/4 of an inch thick, which I hate thin templates because they force you to go in and do an immediate real deep bite. That's not that big of a deal when you know you're going to be going with a deep cavity. So if I had have had a Telecaster template that was acrylic and it was a 1/4 inch thick, that would have been fine because I would have taken my Forstner bit, drilled some of that mass out, drop this baby down in there, make sure it's loose, pull the trigger, and start routing that out pretty quickly. And I've already covered discussing, how deep is that cavity? Well, that's the depth of the cavity, and look how much wood is left in. That lets us know that this top here is massive. It's 7/16 of an inch thick. If the guitar got dropped or bumped or something silly happened, it got maybe something slammed into it, you wouldn't run the risk of it cracking the top. That's a substantial amount of wood left in the top there. So if this thing fell, very unlikely that it's going to crack the top. Got to pay attention to things like that because if you don't, it'll get you in trouble. Let me try to get the table cleaned up here because I'm getting a little bit chaotic with the router bit conversation. And then before, let me check the time. 23 minutes. And before I end the video, which I'm nowhere near there yet, I'll talk about how the very final thing after doing all this machine work and guaranteeing that was 100% perpendicular to the center line, which it was originally, and it had always been. Remember how I had that taped off and protected, was being real careful. This was about 1/8 of an inch wider here. It's about 3/16 of an inch wider here, and it was nearly 1/4 of an inch wider there, and it varied. It was almost the finished guitar right there, and then it was real fat right there. Well, that was so that if I dinged it while I was doing all this other work, I didn't do any irrecoverable damage. But once I had all of this work right here completely finished, I knew it was time to go ahead and do the final perimeter routing. And I'll just discuss it briefly and very quickly how I did that. I'm not gonna screw it on there, but because I went ahead and built the guitar on plywood first, I trusted this 100%. Everything. even my widths here were almost the finished guitar. This is 2 1/4 of an inch wide. For routing, the guitar will finish out 2 3/16 of an inch. So I'm a 32nd of an inch wider here and wider there than the finished guitar. So it's basically finished. You got to be really careful. All of this is finished. And how did I do it? I lined it up on the center lines, and then I came in with these screws. These are called, I think they're called, I think they're backer board screws. If any guys have ever done tile, where you put up concrete board first, and then you put tile over it, these are substantially strong screws, and they will pull things into place. I knew that once because this being plywood, it's not perfectly flat. It's got a little bit of a bow in it. Doesn't matter because the perimeter is fine. But I clamped it all in place, and then I put it in those locations right there, not in the bridge locations. Put it in your tailpiece location. Why? Because of the anchors. Let me get my table cleaned up because I can't stand a table that gets out of order. Because the anchors will be basically a 1/2 inch. The anchors are enormous. I think they're a 1/2 inch. I can't remember. I should know that off the top of my head, but they'll be a 1/2 inch hole. So even if you had come in here with a pretty substantial screw, it wouldn't have hurt it. Now you wouldn't want to split the top, but you get my point. So those are very, very good anchor points for your template. Why? Because once you get that template in place, you don't want to have to think about it. And if there's anything more important as being the very last order of operations, never, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I mean, never ever cut your output jack location first or second or third or fifth or seventh. It needs to be the very last thing you do, because the last thing you'd want to be doing is coming in here, routing off of the template and then routing down, and then forget that you've got a hole right there, because you're looking at it from overhead and you're focusing on everything about it right at the point where you come into and you hit that hole. The bearing hits the hole, and I can assure you, you're going to lose your job. Or if you're lucky, you'll just be able to get it covered under the output jack plate. But if you're running something like this and you hit that control cavity hole, you're going to have a real cool conversation piece right there, because you're going to have a little crescent moon. And at that point, I'd say get some mother of pearl and put some mother of pearl in it and just joke about it, because it'll make you sick when you lose your body. It won't be a game over, but I can assure you, you'll only do that once. And I have done it before. It was about 25 years ago. I tore a beautiful jazz guitar up that I was building because of silliness like that. So anyway, so control cavity layout, talked about that enough. Final shape of the body is the very last thing. So when you are at this point, you're getting very close to finishing the guitar. The only thing that's going to happen next, I don't know if I covered it when I was discussing the channel, but this is going to get sealed first with nitrocellulose lacquer, and then I'm going to epoxy these in place. An 1/8 inch. They're over 1/8 inch. They're about 3/16. No, they're close to 3/16. They're not quite 3/16, but I'm going to epoxy in that top. Okay, and then I'll be ready. I'm actually going to go ahead and do it right now. I'm going to go ahead and radius this edge. I'm glad I'm going off the cuff here. If there's anything critically important to really keep yourself on point, let me explain to you what I'm about to say. You're going to be running this router bit around this edge you've got to stop before you get to the location where the fretboard is. Because the last thing you want, you're not doing binding, the last thing you would want is for that area right there to be rounded over. Because you do that, you'll be making a repair. I don't think it would be noticeable, but it won't be nearly as bad as if you drill that output jack location first. But you'll have a little repair because you'll have a little round over right there. Okay, so try to make certain that you tame yourself to stop your router somewhere in the, don't stop back here, because then you're having to do all this hand round over. Just know basically where your fretboard is going to be, and maybe even take some pencil and draw it. But you can see, kind of hard to hold. This would be about right there. It's not much. It's just that one little corner right there, and but it's little things like that that really show that you planned your job, and then you worked according to your plan. So let me pause, clean off the table, collect myself a little bit. I'm going to do some nitrocellulose lacquer sealing right there, and then we'll do the radius on the body, and then we'll finish the video talking about some other things. Yeah, I covered this in one of the other videos that I erased, but I want to cover this again. This is really important. I didn't really discuss, kind of what's going on under the surface. Since obviously you don't have that neck in yet, you're able to put your 3/16. You would think that an eighth inch drill bit would be large enough. It's not. You're going to need to go with a 3/16 inch drill bit for your wiring channel, and proceed with caution with the electric Herald templates, because he has it drawn to where you come in and you drill straight across into the channel. So that's just not going to work, because and he had it drawn. I think he might have had this one drawn. No, he's got it drawn straight, and that's fine if that was open. But the problem with going straight across is you end up being directly under the screw locations for the back right corner of each pickup ring. And we all know what would happen if a screw went through a hole and there's a wire up under it, and that screw went through the ground shielding and then into the lead. It'd be an acoustic guitar, and you'd never know what was going on, or either you would be confused, and it would be one of those things where and then you would take it all apart and then go test the pickup, realize the pickup's fine, and then you put it back together, put the screw in there, and realize that you're grounding it out again. So I say that to say this: engineer your job so that you're basically engineering it from a finished standpoint and from a functional standpoint as well. And then I had to make certain that that hole's not up too high, so that once you put the cavity in the cavity cover, then there's plenty of path for it. Also, just because of direction as the wire's coming out, it has a tendency to definitely want to continue to go down this way. And it was very important. This is a 1/2 inch channel, but that's a 3/8 of an inch hole down there. But it was very important that you open up that hole and round it out so there's no blockage, because after it's all said and done, I think there are 6 wires in this area right here. They end up taking up an enormous amount of space, because you got 4 wires that are going up to the 3-way, and then a 5th wire, and then there's the 6th wire. So it gets pretty congested right here, and it just, it is what it is. And it would be easy if that was open. But hear me out for a second. The reason I went with the Les Paul design, it's a 1/2 inch channel, a 1/2 inch deep there, and then it gets the maple cap. Well, my cavity is 5/8 of an inch deep. So that once I get my slightly over 1/8 of an inch thick fillet in there, I still got a 1/2 inch by a 1/2 inch square. Plenty of room for all the wiring. So that if you've got all this massive wire up in here, and then you elect to change this pickup in the future, and then you're trying to feed that wire in there, you're going to be able to with ease feed that wire around all those other 5 wires in there. You might jam a little bit, pull out, turn it, twist it, move it, twist it before you know it, and then come in here from the back and maybe do a little bit of tweaking where you might move things a little bit, and then the next thing you know, the wire will come through with no problem. Why am I doing this? I've already covered the strength primarily, but secondarily, why do I know that will work? Because it works on a Les Paul. That's identical to the Les Paul theory. Okay, so now I can pause and do some work, and then I'll be back, and it'll be a different guitar. Okay, I'll start up the video and have a quick conversation about the router bass. I don't really care for the traditional round router bass. They're fine in certain circumstances, but when you're building a guitar like this, where you are basically out on the edge of nothing, and you're having to try to turn that corner without tipping either way, because if you tip, it's pretty much game over. I came up with this idea. I'm sure I'm not the first, but I like this because, make sure I'm unplugged. I like this because I can keep planted, and I'm even gotten to the point where I train myself to kind of not let go, but just put my hand under like this and not hold on to it. Like if I'm coming around this corner, in other words, if I had a real strong grip right here, I might run the risk of pushing it down, if I let off pressure of my left leg or my right leg. But if I make a habit of planting right there, my fist on that plate, that baby's going to stay. I could do it one-handed. And then the reason I said that is because once I get over here, I'm going to now plant with my left hand, so much so that now I'm kind of just cradling here. Now I'm keeping control of it, but I'm just forcing my mind and body operation to be thinking about, all right, I'm basically holding this thing with one hand. I got to make sure I stay planted. And because of this enormous platform out here, I could route it like this if I wanted to, not even touch these. Okay, I hope I didn't get my head in the middle, in front of the camera there. But basically, when I've already covered. When you've got a larger bass like this, it's just so much safer. And also, like if you were doing, I'll digress a little bit, but only because I didn't cover it a little while ago. I love this because when I'm doing my taper, and I've got a jig up here that's on a pitch, whatever pitch I'm installing, I know that I've got an exceptional bass and I don't run the risk of any sort of tipping. Okay, and I'll cover just the operations. What have I sent? Okay, I just ran the router once. You run the risk if you just keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You run the risk of the bearing possibly burning into the end grain. This is critically important if you're doing a clear coat finish. And at this point, now this is 220. Don't use a 120 at this point. And basically just kind of, you guys are woodworkers. You know how to do this. But don't oversand it. Don't undersand it. But I wouldn't use a worn out 400 because you might end up having to sand too much to try to accomplish your job when you should have just gone straight to the finish line. And I'm going to stop because I don't want to run the risk of losing my profile. But you can see how the bearing didn't leave any sort of burn mark. And I stopped right there, left it nice and flat and square. Stopped right there, left it nice and flat and square out there. And then I did do a little bit of additional sanding just because I was curious to see how the wood would act. But also I kind of wanted to see the guitar a little bit. But you do have to bridle yourself. See how That's just normal. It burned a little bit around that corner because I was slowing down and really easing my way around that corner. So just make certain that you got really, really good bits and that you don't. It's really interesting. It has like a. I just noticed that it has like some figure right there. So there's a little character mark, but really beautiful. You can see that's a little bit of a burn right there where I slowed down. Very important that the router bit is turning, this direction right here. Always make pushing cuts. I don't like doing climbing cuts on this stuff, even though, yeah, especially on that because of that end grain. If you were cutting uphill like this, there's a possibility it could tear out, but it's very unlikely that it's going to tear out if you're cutting like that right there. Anyway, I haven't done the back yet. I just wanted you to see how quickly, maybe 15 minutes, it turns into a finished guitar. And I've still got a little bit of sanding to do, of course. But one thing for certain at this point, you have to really bridle yourself. Don't sand too much, okay? So let me pause again and do the back. And it's amazing how quickly just running that 1/4 inch, and that is it's a 1/8 of an inch round over. Okay, so let me pause and I'll finish the back. Okay, should be able to finish the video here. I did not do any sanding on the back side. I did just a brief amount of sanding on the front, but let's do a flyby just to get a view of the guitar. That's going to be typical. You're going to burn just a little bit on the corners because you're slowing down. I got a little bit of burn right there as well. Nothing wrong with that because it'll sand out. And then, I left my flat, excuse me. Sorry. I could have gone ahead and come straight off of that, but no sense in chancing it because once this all goes together and I see that'll get glued in, that'll get cut off flat, and then all that'll get shaped by hand. Okay? Really beautiful. Well, it's hard. It's kind of hard to hold. So, not there yet. That is fit and finished. But after you get to this point, there's nothing wrong with, and there's everything right about coming back and verifying, is it truly, truly finished? I'm talking about the neck fitment to the body. And I fit everything with, once I'm holding it in place, I've got the body clamped and I'm holding the neck with my left hand and I'm doing any sort of shaping that has to be done. And then right at the very end, then I'm seeing if I can get this eraser shield to like bury up in there. And if the eraser shield went in up here at the top a little bit, well, then I'd know that I would need to take a little bit of material, not off of this, but off of the heel. Because see, all this was done with a straight surface and a really nice bit. That was very much precision cut. So I'll stop talking about that. But nonetheless, you see how quickly you're moving into from a S4S body to a radius body, but knowing when to pause and doing all that stuff by hand. Because you'll cut that heel off flush with the bottom, then you'll shape and define the actual heel itself, because that's not the heel. It's pretty close to it, but that's not the heel. And see, it's got a little bit of a chip out right there. Won't matter because it's going to get a whole 1/8 of an inch cut off the whole thing. But you would not have wanted to have cut this exactly 1 1/2 of an inch thick 3 weeks ago and then expect to come back and find these edges perfectly precise. Okay, I apologize. I said we were going to do a flyby and I didn't do a flyby, so let's do that. You're definitely at a point to where you can consider this a finished guitar, even though it's not. It's very close, and you need to start treating it as such, meaning drop cloths on the table. stuff like that, because you don't want to get a ding. I think I've covered it enough, and after I kill the video, I'm going to do all that work. I'll cover that some in the next video. Just know that it's going to get sealed with the nitrocellulose lacquer. That's actually what's about to take place. And then even the back side of the little fillets, they'll get sealed as well. And then everything will get epoxied in. And that'll be a two-step process. It'll get epoxied in. It'll sit for about 3 hours, maybe 4 hours. It'll be strong within about an hour, but I'll let it sit for about 3 to 4 hours on the top one, and then I'll come in and then I'll fit that one. Okay, and then flip the lights off at night, and then come back the next day and then level it with the top. I'm pretty sure I've already covered this, but in the event I might have forgotten, just know that that's your target. That doesn't have to be an Explorer. This could be anything. This could be a Les Paul Jr., it could be a Telecaster, it could be a Strat, custom build, you name it. Okay, beautiful guitar. I would do a weight analysis since we did the round over, but it probably wouldn't be measurable. Well, it's probably measurable, but it's not relevant. Okay. I'll end the video there. I appreciate you guys checking in. The next video will be tomorrow, and in other words, I think tomorrow's Saturday. I know it's not Sunday. Tomorrow's either Friday or Saturday. It'll be tomorrow, and the neck, all that stuff will be finished, leveled, sanded, and I probably will already have the neck glued in. Oh, speaking of that, now that my body's finished, it actually will go in another room on this cloth, and then I'm going to go ahead and finish the neck. See, this is finished and it's ready to glue in. So I'll go ahead and finish the neck up here in the headstock, drill these tuners, and then be prepared to install the fretboard. So now I'm ready to glue that in. Okay, so, whoa, almost dropped it. All the more reason to just end the video. I appreciate you guys checking in, and I'll see you tomorrow in the next video.